I am Dakota, 32 years old, and CEO of Celestial Gems. My relationship with my younger brother Jake has always been complicated. So, when his text popped up on my phone saying he borrowed my cheap necklace for his date, I initially smiled. Until I realized which necklace he meant, the one worth $1 million. The limited edition sapphire that was due for our VIP showcase tomorrow. My heart stopped as I dialed security with steady hands but racing thoughts. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me on this journey of how a family bond was tested by $1 million mistake. Celestial Gems did not become a luxury jewelry brand overnight. It took me 10 years of relentless work, starting from a tiny boutique in downtown Manhattan to our current headquarters, spanning the entire 40th floor of a glass tower overlooking Central Park. The floor-to-ceiling windows in my corner office frame the city skyline, a daily reminder of how far I have come from designing simple pendants at my kitchen table. Now I oversee more than 200 employees and assets worth millions. The sapphire necklace that Jake casually borrowed was the centerpiece of our upcoming Azure collection. 15 carats of the rarest royal blue sapphire from Kashmir, surrounded by 36 diamonds in a platinum setting that took our master craftsman Lucas 3 months to perfect. We had insurance, of course, but this piece was irreplaceable in terms of craftsmanship and prestige. It was scheduled to be the star of our presentation to potential Asian market investors the following day. Our normal security protocol would never allow such a valuable piece to leave the premises without armed guards and tracking devices. Every item valued above $100,000 requires 2 executive signatures, biometric verification, and a security escort for transport. But I had brought it home last night to personally review the entire collection one last time before the showcase. It was a rare breach of protocol that I had justified to myself as necessary dedication to perfection. My sleek penthouse apartment usually serves as my sanctuary from work stress. Minimalist furniture in neutral tones, abstract art on the walls, and a balcony garden where I grow herbs and flowers to clear my mind. But lately the line between home and office had blurred dangerously. Emails at midnight, conference calls during breakfast, and now company assets casually placed on my vanity table while I reviewed marketing materials until 2 in the morning. Jake moved to New York 3 years ago, supposedly to pursue acting, but mostly burning through a series of service jobs and crashing on friends' couches. At 24, he still carried the charming irresponsibility that our parents had always indulged. The baby of the family, 7 years younger than me, Jake had mastered the art of the apologetic smile that somehow made his chaos forgivable. My ex-husband Brad used to call it the Jake cycle. The desperate phone call, the loan to cover rent, the promise to be more responsible, followed by the inevitable disappearance until the next crisis. Brad eventually tired of it, adding Jake to the long list of reasons why our marriage collapsed after just 3 years. The divorce was finalized 18 months ago, but his warnings about my brother still echoed. You cannot save someone who enjoys drowning. Still, Jake was family. When he showed up at my door 6 months ago, fresh from a breakup and another lost job, I gave him my spare key and told him he could stay in the guest room until he found his footing. It was supposed to be temporary, but Jake had a way of making temporary feel permanent. He came and went at odd hours, sometimes disappeared for days, but always returned with elaborate stories and that disarming smile. I had warned him repeatedly not to touch anything work-related in the apartment. The spare bedroom where he stayed was at the opposite end of the hallway from my home office, creating what I had thought was a clear boundary between my personal and professional spaces. There had been minor incidents, a missing laptop charger, a coffee spill on contract drafts, but nothing that justified changing the locks on my own brother. The sapphire necklace had been securely locked in its custom case when I finally went to bed. I distinctly remember placing it on my vanity table, intending to have my assistant Megan pick it up first thing in the morning. The case required a key that I kept on my personal keychain, which meant that Jake must have found the key in my purse while I was in the shower this morning. Another boundary crossed, as if it were nothing more than an inconvenient suggestion. I had been distracted during my morning routine, mentally rehearsing my presentation while applying makeup and responding to early emails. In my rush to get to the office for an 8 o'clock strategy meeting, I had forgotten to check that the necklace was secure before leaving. A critical mistake that would cost me more than I could have imagined. On my vanity table now sat an empty jewelry case, its velvet interior molded perfectly to the shape of the missing necklace. Next to it was a hastily scribbled note in Jake's messy handwriting. Borrowed your blue necklace for tonight. Looks expensive, but I know it's costume jewelry. Will return tomorrow. Thanks, sis. The assumption that anything in my possession could be costume jewelry was so typically Jake. Despite visiting my office, despite seeing press coverage of Celestial Gems' rise in the luxury market, he still somehow viewed my career as some kind of elaborate game rather than the serious business it was. This disconnect had been irritating before. Now it was potentially catastrophic. I thought about all the times I had covered for Jake with our parents, the rent checks I had quietly paid when he was short, the car I had helped him finance when he insisted reliable transportation would turn his life around, the reference letters I had written to friends in various industries, putting my own reputation on the line to help him get a fresh start. And now, here I was facing the possible theft of $1 million company asset by my own brother. The morning had started like any other high-pressure day at Celestial Gems. I arrived at the office by 7:30, Starbucks venti Americano in hand, mentally running through my presentation about our expansion into the Asian luxury market. The conference room was already set up with the marketing team finalizing slides and our financial analysts making last-minute adjustments to the projections. Vincent, our CFO, was discussing currency exchange considerations with our international sales director when my phone vibrated with Jake's text. Borrowed your cheap necklace for my date. Thanks. I felt a fleeting irritation at yet another invasion of my personal space, but quickly returned to reviewing the presentation materials. It was only during a brief bathroom break 30 minutes before the investors were due to arrive that the significance of his message fully registered in my mind. My hands froze under the running water as the realization hit me. The only necklace I had at home was the sapphire. I rushed back to my office, ignoring the concerned looks from my team, and called my apartment building. The concierge confirmed that Jake had left the building around 10 that morning. I hung up and immediately dialed Jake's number, but it went straight to voicemail. My next call was to Megan. Miss Williams, did you pick up the azure sapphire from my apartment this morning? There was a pause. No, you texted me not to come by, that you would bring it yourself for the presentation. I definitely sent no such text. Dread pooled in my stomach as I opened my messaging app and saw a text to Megan from my phone, sent at 7:15. Don't worry about picking up the necklace. I'll bring it myself. No need to come to the apartment. Jake had used my phone, while I was in the shower, to ensure no one would discover the missing necklace until it was too late. I closed my office door and leaned against it, trying to control my breathing. The sapphire necklace was not only valuable, but irreplaceable on short notice. The investors arriving in less than an hour were specifically interested in our azure collection, with the sapphire as its centerpiece. Advertising materials featuring the necklace had already been distributed. Celebrities had been photographed with the design mock-ups. My phone rang. It was Olivia, our head of security, wondering why the sapphire hadn't been checked in through the normal security protocols this morning. I took a deep breath and made the hardest phone call of my career. Olivia, I need to report a security breach. The Azure Sapphire is missing. Her sharp intake of breath was followed by a tense silence. This is not a drill, correct? Number, I need to implement our theft response protocol immediately. The wheels of corporate crisis management began turning with terrifying efficiency. Within minutes, Vincent was in my office, face pale, as he discussed insurance implications. Harold, our legal counsel, arrived moments later with a preliminary assessment of liability issues. The investors were stalled in the lobby with a story about technical difficulties in the presentation room. I want to be very clear, I said to the crisis team now assembled in my office. This is my brother. He doesn't know what he took. He thinks it's costume jewelry. Vincent removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. Dakota, with all due respect, it doesn't matter what he thinks. He took $1 million company asset without authorization. The insurance company will classify this as theft, regardless of his intent. Harold nodded grimly. The board will need to be notified immediately. As CEO, you had responsibility for the asset once it left secure premises. The fact that the perpetrator is your brother only complicates matters. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I knew what they weren't saying. That I had compromised company security for personal convenience, that my family connection created a conflict of interest, that my position as CEO could be in jeopardy. Can we hold off on notifying the police? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Let me try to reach him first. We have exactly 1 hour before security protocols mandate law enforcement involvement, Olivia said, checking her watch. Company policy is clear. The door opened, and Megan stepped in, her expression apologetic. The investors are getting restless, and Mr. Peterson from the board is on line 1 asking about the presentation delay. I nodded mechanically and picked up the phone. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of damage control. The investors were told that a transport security issue had delayed the showcase, which would be rescheduled for the following week. Mr. Peterson was given a vague explanation about quality control concerns requiring last-minute adjustments to the collection. Throughout it all, I kept trying Jake's phone, which remained stubbornly silent. I sent texts, each more urgent than the last. Jake, call me immediately. The necklace you took is not costume jewelry. It is extremely valuable. Jake, this is a company emergency. Where are you? I need that necklace back now. With each unanswered message, my anxiety spiraled higher. The memory of our last major conflict surfaced unwanted in my mind. Jake had borrowed my car without permission and gotten into a fender bender. When confronted, had exploded in anger, accusing me of caring more about my possessions than his well-being. We hadn't spoken for 3 months afterward, until he called on my birthday with a casual, "Hey sis, miss me," as if nothing had happened. This time was different. This wasn't just about me and Jake. My company, my employees, my career, all hung in the balance. The hour deadline approached with excruciating slowness and devastating speed simultaneously. 58 minutes after my call to Olivia with no word from Jake, I made the decision that would change our relationship forever. Implement the full security protocol, I told Olivia, my voice hollow. Contact law enforcement. The necklace has been stolen. With the security protocol activated, Celestial Gems transformed from a luxury jewelry company into a crime investigation center. Olivia coordinated with the NYPD, while I provided them with Jake's information and photo. Given the value of the missing item, the police took the case seriously, assigning detectives from their major theft division. But I couldn't just sit and wait. I pulled up the family tracking app it insisted we all install after Jake had disappeared for a week last year, following a bad breakup. He had forgotten to disable it, or perhaps never bothered to check if it was still active. The blue dot, showing his location, was moving along Fifth Avenue, then stopped at what appeared to be Le Cirque, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Of course, Jake would never splurge like that on his bartender's salary. He was trying to impress someone with both the fancy restaurant and my sapphire necklace. I pulled up his Instagram, which he hadn't bothered to make private despite my repeated warnings about digital privacy. His story updates from the past week featured selfies with a stunning blonde woman tagged as Vanessa Carlton 98. A quick dive into her profile revealed she was Vanessa Carlton, daughter of real estate magnate Frederick Carlton. Her posts showcased a lifestyle of private jets, champagne brunches, and casual photos taken in homes that looked like museum exhibits. Jake was dating someone from the social elite. Suddenly, his desperate need to impress made a twisted kind of sense. Had always been drawn to people who represented the status and recognition he craved. And now, he was using my necklace, my company's necklace, to appear more successful than he was. I forwarded the location information to Olivia and the police. Given the value of the item, they dispatched officers immediately. I also sent our private security team, instructing them to be discreet but prepared for any scenario. Then, against the advice of both Harold and Vincent, I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. "I need to be there," I said, when Harold tried to block my path. "Hez my brother. This doesn't need to become a public spectacle." The 20-minute drive to Le Cirque was the longest of my life. My phone buzzed constantly with updates. The police had arrived, security was in position, the restaurant manager had been informed of the situation. Each message ratcheted my anxiety higher. By the time my driver pulled up to the curb, I could see the commotion already unfolding. 2 police cars were parked outside with lights flashing. Restaurant patrons were gathered on the sidewalk, some looking confused, others filming with their phones. I heard one woman say something about a bomb threat, and another speculating about celebrities and paparazzi. None of them knew they were witnessing the potential implosion of both my company and my family. I pushed through the crowd, flashing my ID to the officer guarding the entrance. Inside, the elegant dining room had been partially cleared. In the center, surrounded by officers, stood Jake. The sapphire necklace gleamed against the black dress of the blonde woman beside him, its blue stone capturing the light like a captive ocean. "Jake," I called out, my voice breaking the tense silence. His head snapped up, eyes widening in confusion, then narrowing in anger. "Dakota, what the hell is this?" The woman Vanessa looked between us, her perfectly manicured hand rising to touch the necklace at her throat. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice high with alarm. A detective stepped forward. "Sir, we need you to carefully remove the necklace from the lady and place it in this security container," he said, holding out a padded box. Jake laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "This is insane. It's my sister's necklace. It's just costume jewelry." "Sir, that necklace is a 15-carat cashmere sapphire valued at approximately $1 million. It's the property of Celestial Gems Corporation." Vanessa's hand flew from the necklace as if it had burned her. Her eyes, wide with shock, turned accusingly to Jake. "You told me it was a family heirloom." The restaurant had gone completely silent, every remaining patron and staff member frozen in place watching the drama unfold. I could practically see the social media posts being composed in real time. Crazy scene at Le Cirque guy arrested for stealing $1 million necklace. Jake, I said, trying to keep my voice level. You took it from my apartment this morning. You sent away my assistant who was supposed to pick it up. You knew it wasn't yours to take. I thought it was just one of your samples, he shouted, his face flushing red. Why would you leave something worth $1 million just sitting out? It wasn't just sitting out, I hissed. It was in a locked case. A case I have a key to, because I'm your brother. Because I'm family, he fired back. Or at least I thought I was. The detective moved forward again, more insistent. Sir, please remove the necklace now. Vanessa recovered from her initial shock, reached behind her neck with trembling fingers. The clasp came undone, and she carefully handed the sapphire to the detective, who placed it in the security container. 2 officers moved toward Jake. Jacob Williams, you are under arrest for grand larceny. The detective began reciting Miranda rights as an officer produced handcuffs. This is a mistake, Jake protested, looking wildly around the restaurant. Tell them, Dakota. Tell them I didn't steal anything. But the words stuck in my throat. By strict legal definition, he had stolen the necklace, had taken it without permission, prevented my assistant from retrieving it, and used it for personal gain. The CEO in me knew that pressing charges was the correct corporate response. The sister in me was paralyzed with conflicting emotions. An officer took Jake's arm, turning him around to apply the handcuffs. The metallic click seemed to echo through the silent restaurant. As they led him toward the door, he twisted to look back at me, his expression a mixture of betrayal, anger, and for just a moment, fear. I always knew your precious company meant more to you than family, he spat. Thanks for proving me right. Then he was gone, escorted through the crowd of onlookers and into a waiting police car. Vanessa stood, frozen tears streaming down her perfect makeup. The security container with the sapphire necklace was handed to Olivia, who had materialized beside me. The detective approached, notepad in hand, ready to take my official statement. But all I could focus on was the space where Jake had stood, the echo of his accusation hanging in the air. Had I just sacrificed my brother to save my company? The necklace was recovered, but at what cost? A flash went off nearby. I turned to see a man with a professional camera and press badge. How did he get here so quickly? Another followed, then another. Someone shoved a microphone toward me. Miss Williams, is it true your brother stole $1 million necklace from your company? Was this an inside job? Did you press charges against your own brother? The questions came rapid fire as more press arrived, drawn by the police presence and the whispers of a juicy scandal. Olivia signaled to our security team, who formed a protective barrier around me as they escorted me toward the exit. I caught one last glimpse of Vanessa, now surrounded by her own friends who had been dining with them, their faces a mixture of concern and barely concealed excitement at being adjacent to such drama. Our eyes met briefly before I was ushered out the door and into the waiting car. As we pulled away from the curb, my phone lit up with a text from Herald. Breaking news alert already on page 6. Board requesting emergency meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. The sapphire necklace was safe, nestled in its security container on Olivia's lap. My brother was in police custody. My company was in crisis mode. And the carefully constructed wall between my personal and professional lives had just spectacularly collapsed. The next morning, the story had exploded across both traditional and social media. The New York Post ran with the headline, CEO calls cops on brother over $1 million jewel heist. More respectable outlets framed it slightly better, but the essence was the same: family drama and luxury jewelry made for irresistible clickbait. The emergency board meeting was even worse than I had anticipated. I sat at the head of the conference table facing the stern expressions of our 12 board members. Edward Montgomery, our largest investor and most vocal board member, tapped his fountain pen against his leather portfolio with metronomic precision. "The stock is down 5% this morning," he said, without preamble. "Our security protocols have been publicly compromised. Our CEO has a direct family connection to an alleged thief. This is precisely the kind of scandal that can sink a luxury brand built on trust and exclusivity." "The sapphire has been recovered," I pointed out. "No permanent damage was done." Vincent, seated to my right, slid a tablet toward me. The screen displayed a real-time ticker of Celestial Gems, stock the line trending stubbornly downward. "The market disagrees, Dakota." The board spent the next hour dissecting every aspect of the incident. Why had I removed the necklace from secure premises? Why did my brother have access to my apartment? Had I considered the optics of having my own brother arrested? What steps were being taken to prevent similar breaches in the future? I answered each question with as much professional detachment as I could muster, but beneath the surface I was drowning. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since dawn. My parents had called 6 times, leaving increasingly angry voicemails about how I could do this to my own brother. "We expect better from you, Dakota," my mother's final message had concluded. "Jake made a mistake, but family protects family. You chose your company over your brother. I don't even recognize you anymore." That hurt more than anything the board could say. My parents had always been proud of my success, but their support had always seemed conditional on me continuing to be Jake's safety net. For years I had accepted this role without question. Now that I had finally drawn a line, I was the villain in their eyes. After the board meeting, I received reports that Jake had been released on bail, courtesy of our parents emptying their retirement account to post the bond. He had refused to speak to the company lawyers I had sent to the precinct. According to the court liaison, he had listed our parents' address in New Jersey as his temporary residence, not my apartment. The message was clear: he wanted nothing to do with me. The week continued to unravel with alarming speed. Our major retail partners called with concerns about security protocols for their inventory. Competitors began circling one, even running an ad highlighting their state-of-the-art security measures with the tagline, "Your luxury investments actually secure." The Asian market investors, who had been in the lobby during the initial crisis, sent word through their representative that they were reconsidering the partnership, citing concerns about company stability and asset management. My inbox filled with interview requests from fashion magazines, business publications, and tabloid shows, all seeking the inside story on the Williams family jewelry drama. Our PR team worked around the clock to craft responses and minimize damage, but the story had taken on a life of its own. On Wednesday afternoon, I received a notification that Vanessa had posted about the incident on her Instagram account. With over 200,000 followers, truth time. When someone shows you $1 million necklace on your third date, ask questions, still in shock about Monday night's dinner disaster, thought I was dating a nice guy, turns out I was dating a thief with family issues. Always trust your instincts. Ladies, number lesson learned, number trust issues, number dodged a bullet. The post had already garnered thousands of likes and comments, many tagging Jake and Celestial Gems. Some enterprising internet sleuths had connected the dots to me, sharing links to company profiles and speculation about the family dynamics at play. The court of public opinion was in full session, and no one was emerging unscathed. By Thursday, I noticed whispers among the staff when I walked through the office. Nothing overt, just conversations that stopped abruptly when I approached, sympathetic glances quickly averted. The company-wide email I'd sent explaining the situation in professional terms had done little to quell the gossip. How could it? The human drama was far more interesting than corporate security protocols. The final blow came Friday morning when I learned that the VIP showcase had been officially canceled, not just postponed. 3 of the 5 major clients had pulled out, citing scheduling conflicts that I knew were merely polite excuses. The Azure Collection, our most ambitious and expensive line to date, was now in limbo, its signature piece tainted by scandal before it even officially launched. I sat alone in my office that evening, long after everyone else had gone home. The sapphire necklace, now back in secure storage in our vault, had been cleared as evidence since Jake wasn't contesting that had taken it. The police investigation was ongoing, but had lost its urgency once the item was recovered. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, Jake and me at my company launch party 5 years ago, his arms slung casually around my shoulders as we both smiled for the camera. Jake helping me move into this very office, pretending to wear my executive nameplate as a necklace to make me laugh when I was stressed about the responsibility. Jake at family Christmases, always the center of attention, always the one making everyone laugh. Had I overreacted? The question gnawed at me. I could have handled it differently, perhaps. Could have sent security alone to quietly retrieve the necklace. Could have kept it out of police hands, out of the press. But then, what message would that have sent? That company rules didn't apply if you were the CEO's brother, that $1 million theft was forgivable if you claimed ignorance. My phone rang, breaking the silence. Unknown number. I almost declined it, but some instinct made me answer. Dakota Williams. A woman cleared her throat. Miss Williams, this is Vanessa Carlton. My grip tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? Does it matter? She asked, her voice tight. I just thought you should know that Jake contacted me today. He wants to meet to explain his side of the story. I haven't decided if I will. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. Why are you telling me this? Because she said there was a pause. He's been saying some things. About you. About the company. That there are other issues beyond this necklace incident. That you've been covering for him for years. I thought you should know he's talking. The implication hung in the air. Jake was angry, hurt, and looking for revenge. And he had information that could potentially cause even more damage to both me and Celestial Gems. Thank you for letting me know, I said finally. I didn't do it for you, she replied coldly. I did it because nobody deserves to be blindsided, not even you. The line went dead. I placed my phone face down on the desk and stared out at the city lights, knowing that somewhere out there my brother was plotting his next move. And this time he wasn't looking for forgiveness. He was looking for payback. After a week of silence, I decided I couldn't wait any longer for Jake to make his next move. Sunday morning I drove to his new apartment in Brooklyn, a walk-up in a neighborhood that was still in the early stages of gentrification. Our parents had co-signed the lease after he refused to return to my place. I knocked 3 times before he finally opened the door. Jake looked terrible shadows under his eyes, hair unwashed, wearing the same Knicks t-shirt I'd seen him in countless times during hungover mornings at my place. The apartment behind him was sparsely furnished, moving boxes still stacked against the wall. What do you want? He asked, not moving to let me in. We need to talk, Jake. Now you want to talk, he laughed bitterly. A little late, don't you think? After you had me arrested in front of the entire restaurant? After you humiliated me in front of Vanessa? I kept my voice level. Are you going to make me have this conversation in the hallway? He hesitated, then stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. Welcome to my humble abode. Not quite your penthouse, but then again, I don't have million-dollar jewelry lying around. The apartment was small, but could have been nice with some effort. Instead, it looked like Jake had been camping rather than living there. Empty takeout containers on the coffee table clothes, draped over unpacked boxes, a makeshift bed of sheets and blankets on a mattress on the floor. I sat on the only chair, a wooden one with a wobbly leg. Jake remained standing, arms crossed defensively across his chest. I came to understand why I said simply, "Why you took the necklace? Why you lied about it?" "Isn't it obvious?" he snapped. "I needed to impress Vanessa. I thought it was just some sample, something you'd never miss. I had no idea it was worth that much." "I think there's more to it than that." His eyes slid away from mine. "What do you mean?" "Vanessa called me," I said. "She mentioned you've been talking. About me. About the company. She seemed to think you had some kind of vendetta." That got his attention. His posture stiffened. "So what if I do? You had me arrested, Dakota. In public. Do you have any idea what that was like?" "I can't imagine," I admitted. "But I still don't understand why you took the necklace in the first place. You know how important my work is. You know not to touch my things without asking." Jake paced the small room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "You want to know why? Really? Because for once in my life, I wanted to be the impressive one. Do you know what it's like being your brother, Dakota the prodigy? Dakota the CEO? Dakota who built $1 million company from scratch?" His voice rose with each statement, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "I just wanted Vanessa to look at me the way people look at you. With respect, with admiration. Just once." The rawness of his admission hit me like a physical blow. All these years, I'd thought I was helping him, supporting him. I'd never considered that my success might be casting a shadow he felt trapped in. There was a long silence. Jake slumped onto the edge of the mattress, suddenly looking exhausted. "There is something else," he finally said, voice so low I had to lean forward to hear him. "I owe some people money." "What kind of money? How much?" He winced. 40,000. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. "Jake, what the hell? How?" "Gambling," he admitted, not meeting my eyes. "Started with poker nights with friends, then sports betting, then online. I thought I could win it back, but—" The classic gambler's delusion. But this was worse than it imagined. 40,000 wasn't just credit card debt or unpaid rent. That was serious money. "Who do you owe?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Some guys. They aren't exactly the type to offer payment plans. They gave me until the end of the month." Suddenly, the timing made sense. The desperate attempt to impress Vanessa, whose family had money. He wasn't just looking for a girlfriend. He was looking for a financial savior. "I came to tell you something else," I said quietly. "I know you were talking to Gemstone International last month." His head snapped up, genuine surprise on his face. "How did you—" "Their HR department called to verify your employment dates with Celestial Gems. But I never worked for." This time, his surprise seemed genuine. "Exactly. You lied on your application, said you were a consultant for us for 2 years. Gemstone International was our biggest competitor. Jake applying there could have been innocent enough, but lying about working for my company crossed yet another line. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I needed the job. They wouldn't have looked twice at a bartender's resume." The room felt too small, too airless. Every revelation was another weight on my chest. How many more secrets was he keeping? Mom and Dad always said I was the difficult one. I said more to myself than to Jake, the serious one. The one who didn't know how to have fun. Meanwhile, they were always running to clean up your messes. "That's not fair," he protested. "Isn't it? When you totaled Dad's car, they bought you a new one. When you dropped out of college, they called it finding your path. When you needed money, they gave it without question. But I was always held to a different standard. Jake stared at the floor. You were always so perfect. You didn't need their help. I laughed a short, bitter sound. Perfect, Jake. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through business school. I built my company while you were partying through your 20s. I gave you money when you needed it, kept it from Mom and Dad so they wouldn't worry. His head jerked up. Wait, what? The rent checks last year, the car loan. You thought that came from their retirement fund. That was me. I paid it and told them I'd handled it because I didn't want them stressing about money at their age. Jake looked genuinely stunned. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, because you've never had to think about anyone but yourself. The words hung between us, harsh but true. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something like shame cross his face. I knew, he said finally. Knew what? About the necklace. He met my eyes directly for the first time. I Googled celestial gems the morning I took it. Saw the press release about the Azure collection. I knew it was valuable. Not $1 million valuable, but I knew it wasn't costume jewelry. The admission knocked the wind out of me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act. Why, Jake? Why would you do that? He shrugged, a gesture so casual it made my blood boil. I figured you'd cover for me. You always do. The company has insurance, right? No real harm done. No real harm? Are you serious right now? The board is questioning my leadership. Our stock has dropped. Partners are pulling out of deals. My entire career is on the line. But all that matters to you is the company, he shot back. God forbid anything threaten the precious celestial gems empire. You know what, I'm actually glad this happened? At least now I know where I stand with you. Somewhere below the bottom line. That's not fair, and you know it. Jake stood up, anger radiating from him. What's not fair is having a sister who acts like she's better than everyone else, who judges every choice I make, who makes me feel like a failure every time I walk into a room with her. I never. Yes, you do, he shouted. Every time you bail me out, every time you fix my problems, the message is clear. Poor Jake can't handle his own life. Good thing he has successful Dakota to save him. I stared at him, truly seeing the depth of his resentment for the first time. All these years I'd thought I was helping, but from his perspective, each act of assistance had been another reminder of his inadequacy. I'm sorry if that's how it felt, I said quietly. That was never my intention. Yeah, well, intentions don't count for much, do they? He muttered, deflating slightly. Just like I never intended to cause such a huge mess with the necklace. But here we are. Here we are indeed. 2 siblings standing in a sparse apartment, a chasm of misunderstanding and hurt between us that seemed impossible to bridge. So what now, he asked. You press charges, I go to jail, and we never speak again. I don't want that, Jake. What do you want then? It was a simple question, with no simple answer. What did I want? My company secure, my brother safe, my parents understanding, a time machine to go back and lock that necklace in the safe where it belonged. I want us to fix this, I said finally. But not like before. Not with me writing a check and you making promises you won't keep. Real change this time. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The anger seemed to drain out of him, leaving only exhaustion and something that might have been relief. I think I need help, Dakota, he admitted, his voice barely audible. With the gambling, with everything. It was the first time in our adult lives I'd heard him acknowledge he couldn't handle things alone. A small step, but perhaps the most important one. We can get you that help, I said. But this time there's going to be accountability, real consequences, for both of us. As I left his apartment an hour later, the weight on my chest had shifted. Not lighter exactly, but different. The path forward was unclear, but at least now we were both acknowledging the real issues instead of pretending everything was fine. My phone buzzed with a text from Vincent Board, wants update on Jake's situation tomorrow. What should I tell them? I typed back, tell them I'll handle it personally. And I will. The following Monday, I walked into the board meeting with a clear plan and newfound determination. Instead of taking my usual seat at the head of the table, I stood commanding the attention of everyone present. Before we begin the formal agenda, I need to address the situation with my brother and the Azure Sapphire, I said. What happened was unacceptable, and as CEO, I take full personal responsibility. Edward Montgomery raised his eyebrows. That sounds like a resignation speech, Dakota. Not resignation, I corrected. Accountability. I allowed a company asset to be removed from secure premises without proper protocols. That decision was mine alone, and I am prepared to face the consequences. I outlined my proposal. I would personally cover the insurance deductible for the incident from my own funds. Additionally, I would forfeit this year's executive bonus as a demonstration of my commitment to company security. The board members exchanged glances, clearly surprised by my approach. Most had expected excuses or deflection, not direct accountability. Furthermore, I continued, I have developed a comprehensive security overhaul proposal. I distributed tablets with my presentation already loaded. For the next 30 minutes, I walked them through my plan biometric verification for all items valued over $50,000. GPS tracking embedded in major pieces, updated security training for all staff, and a complete revision of the plant home approval process for sample reviews. Vincent looked impressed, despite himself. This addresses most of the concerns our insurance provider raised, he noted. What about your brother Edward? Asked bluntly. The criminal charges are still pending. The company name will be dragged through court proceedings. I met his gaze steadily. The legal situation is being addressed separately. However, I want to be clear that I will not be using company resources or influence to interfere with the proper legal process. It was the hardest line I'd ever drawn with regards to Jake, but it was necessary. The days of quietly cleaning up his messes were over. The board voted unanimously to accept my proposal, though Edward warned that they would be monitoring the situation closely. As the meeting concluded, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time, I had acknowledged my own role in enabling Jake's behavior while also refusing to sacrifice my professional integrity to protect him. That evening, I met with my parents at their home in New Jersey. The conversation was even more difficult than the board meeting. They sat stiffly on the sofa, my father's arms crossed defensively, my mother's eyes red from crying. How could you do this to your own brother? My mother demanded, before Id even sat down. Have him arrested like a common criminal. I took a deep breath. Mom, Dad, I love you both, but we need to have an honest conversation about Jake. For the next hour, I laid out the pattern of behavior. I'd been enabling for years the money I'd given him without their knowledge. The lie's head told the gambling debt's head accumulated. They listened with increasing distress as the full picture emerged. Why didn't you tell us? My father asked, looking suddenly older. Because I was trying to protect you, I admitted. And because I thought I could fix it, I was wrong. None of us can fix this for Jake. He needs to take responsibility for himself. My mother wiped her eyes. But having him arrested... Mom, he stole $1 million necklace. He knew it was valuable. He admitted that to me. This isn't just a family matter, it's a legal one. Their resistance was palpable, but I stood firm. After decades of the family dynamic revolving around protecting Jake, I was finally insisting on a new approach. By the time I left, there were no warm hugs or reassurances that everything would be fine. Instead, there was an uneasy truce and a tentative agreement to attend a family counseling session. Back at the office, I faced the challenge of rebuilding trust with my team and partners. I scheduled individual meetings with each department head taking full responsibility for the security breach, while also outlining concrete steps to prevent future incidents. With Olivia's help, I developed the Transparency in Luxury initiative, inviting industry partners and clients to review our new security protocols. Rather than hiding from the scandal, we leaned into it, positioning Celestial Gems as a leader in security innovation within the luxury sector. The PR team crafted a carefully worded statement, acknowledging the incident without revealing private family details. I gave exactly one interview to Business Insider, focusing on corporate responsibility and the unique challenges of family-owned businesses. When one of our major clients expressed hesitation about continuing our partnership, I flew to Paris personally to meet with their executive team. I brought not just reassurances, but hard data and concrete policy changes. The trip resulted not only in saving the partnership, but expanding it to include exclusive rights to their European boutiques. Meanwhile, I hired a private investigator to look into Jake's claims about the gambling debts. The results were troubling. He owed money to individuals connected to organized crime, and there was evidence that someone had approached him specifically about information regarding Celestial Gems' security protocols. The timing suggested it wasn't coincidental that Jake had taken that particular necklace. Armed with this information, I met with the district attorney handling Jake's case. While I wouldn't use company influence to make the charges disappear, I could provide context that might lead to a more constructive resolution. After lengthy discussions, an agreement was reached. Jake would enter a plea deal requiring restitution, community service, and mandatory gambling addiction treatment instead of jail time. The final piece fell into place when I established the Employee Crisis Fund at Celestial Gems. Funded initially from my personal accounts and then through voluntary executive contributions, the program provided confidential emergency assistance to employees facing personal crises, from medical emergencies to addiction issues. The message was clear: we could maintain professional standards while still supporting our people through difficult times. When Jake called to tell me he'd accepted the plea deal, his voice sounded different, clearer, more present than it had in years. "They're requiring me to attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings," he said, 3 times a week. "Good." "Yeah," he paused. "It actually is good. I went to my first one yesterday. It's helping to hear other people talk about it. To know I'm not the only one. I'm glad, Jake." There was a long silence before he spoke again. "I met with Mom's financial advisor yesterday. We're working out a repayment plan for the bail money they put up. Small amounts each month, but I will pay it all back." It was such a simple statement, but it represented a monumental shift. Jake taking responsibility, making a plan, following through. The skeptical part of me wondered how long it would last, but I chose to focus on the progress rather than the doubts. "I'm proud of you," I told him, and meant it. When he laughed, it was his old laugh, not the bitter one he'd heard in his apartment. "Don't get too excited. I'm still working at a coffee shop and living in a crappy apartment. Not exactly the Williams family success story. Success isn't measured by your job title or address, Jake. It's about living with integrity, something I think we're both learning more about lately." After we hung up, I sat at my desk looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The Celestial Gems stock had begun to recover. The Azure collection had finally launched, albeit with a modified marketing campaign. My position as CEO remained secure. But the most significant change wasn't visible on any balance sheet or stock ticker. It was in the boundaries I'd finally established with both my family and my company. For the first time, I wasn't trying to be everyone's savior at the expense of my own well-being. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that I was learning made all the difference. 1 year later, I stood at the podium of the Women in Business Leadership Conference, looking out at a sea of attentive faces. The organizers had asked me to speak about crisis management, but I had chosen a more personal angle, the boundaries of leadership. When people think about leadership challenges, they often focus on market volatility, competitive threats, or technological disruption, I began. But sometimes the most difficult leadership moments come from the places we least expect, from the personal relationships that shape who we are beyond our professional titles. As I shared the carefully edited version of my experience, the security breach, the public recovery, the lessons learned, I spotted a familiar face in the audience. Jake sat in the back row, giving me a small nod of encouragement when our eyes met. In the year since the Sapphire incident, both our lives had transformed in ways neither of us could have predicted. Jake had completed his court-mandated gambling treatment program and voluntarily continued with therapy afterward. He had moved to Philadelphia to make a fresh start, taking a job at a marketing firm that had nothing to do with the jewelry industry. It was entry-level work, but he was earning his advancement through merit rather than charm for the first time in his life. Our relationship had slowly mended through carefully maintained boundaries. Weekly phone calls, monthly visits, no financial entanglements, no rescuing. When he faced challenges, I listened without immediately offering solutions. When he succeeded, I celebrated without taking credit. It wasn't always easy. This new dynamic required constant vigilance against old patterns. But it was healthier than anything we'd known before. Celestial Gems had not only recovered, but thrived. Our new security systems had become an industry standard, with other luxury brands adopting similar protocols. The Transparency in Luxury initiative had evolved into an industry consortium focused on ethical practices and security standards. Our stock price had risen 23% above its pre-crisis level. The Employee Crisis Fund had helped 17 staff members through personal emergencies in its first year, creating a culture where people felt supported without fear of professional repercussions. The program had been featured in Forbes as an innovative approach to workplace wellness. I wrapped up my speech with the lessons that had come at such a high personal cost. In leadership as in life, we must recognize that true strength comes not from trying to control everything, but from establishing healthy boundaries. Sometimes the most caring thing we can do for others is to stop shielding them from the consequences of their actions. And sometimes the most professional thing we can do for our organizations is to acknowledge our own humanity. The applause was gratifying, but the real reward came afterward when Jake approached with a woman I didn't recognize. "Great speech, sis," he said, giving me a quick hug. "This is Melissa, my girlfriend." Melissa smiled warmly as we shook hands. "I don't normally attend business conferences, but Jake insisted your talk would be worth it." He was right. We chatted briefly about her work as an art therapist and their plans to visit our parents next weekend. There was an ease between them that I'd never seen in Jake's previous relationships. None of the performative charm or desperate need to impress. He seemed comfortable in his own skin for perhaps the first time in his adult life. As they turned to leave, Jake paused. "Oh, I almost forgot. I made my final restitution payment to the court last week. I'm officially debt-free." The pride in his voice was unmistakable. Not the hollow pride of someone seeking validation, but the quiet satisfaction of genuine accomplishment. "That's wonderful, Jake. You did that on your own." He nodded, acknowledging the significance of those words. "Yeah, I did." After they left, I ran into someone unexpected in the hotel lobby, Vanessa Carlton. She was attending a different conference in the same venue, looking as polished and privileged as ever. "Dakota," she said, sounding surprised. "I heard you were speaking today." The initial awkwardness gave way to a surprisingly candid conversation. She had started her own foundation focusing on financial literacy for young adults. "After what happened with Jake, I realized how many people don't understand basic financial concepts," she explained. "Even people from wealthy backgrounds often have no idea how to manage money responsibly." We exchanged business cards, agreeing to explore partnership opportunities between her foundation and the Employee Crisis Fund. As we parted ways, she hesitated. "I was wrong about you, she said. "When everything happened with the necklace, I thought you were cold for pressing charges against your own brother. But looking back, it might have been the kindest thing anyone had done for him in a long time." Her insight was unexpected but perceptive. Sometimes the most caring acts don't look like caring on the surface. Sometimes they look like holding someone accountable. That evening in my hotel room, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. The sapphire necklace that had caused so much turmoil was now the centerpiece of our most successful collection, its value enhanced by its infamous history. The very thing that had threatened to destroy both my company and my family had ultimately strengthened both, though not without considerable pain in the process. I thought about the nature of precious gems, how their value comes not just from their rarity, but from the careful cutting away of rough edges to reveal the brilliance within. Perhaps relationships work the same way. The ones that truly shine are those that have endured pressure, that have had their unnecessary elements cut away, leaving only the essential connection. Cracks in relationships, like cracks in precious stones, can either devalue them or become part of their unique character, their story. The difference lies in how we respond to those imperfections, whether we try to hide them or incorporate them into something new and perhaps more beautiful than before. The next morning, as I prepared to check out, I received a text from Jake. "Just wanted to say, I'm proud of you too. Not just for the company stuff, but for being brave enough to change our family patterns. It's saved us both." Sometimes, the most valuable things we possess aren't the ones we can lock in a safe or insure for millions. They're the honest connections we forge with others, and the courage to protect those connections, even when it means letting go of comfortable patterns. If you have ever had to make the difficult choice between enabling someone you love or holding them accountable, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. How did you find the strength to establish boundaries? What happened afterward? Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these difficult journeys is the greatest gift we can receive. Thank you for listening, and remember that the most precious gems in our lives are the relationships we carefully tend even through the most challenging times.